Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here in Silicon Valley. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, if this is the last general session of the day that you want to follow out there on SYS-CON TV. We have reached, as I say, the final session of day one, but true to form with Cloud Expo, this is going to be one of the best sessions of the day. So, if you were thinking of sneaking out early just because we're going to ply you with beer and food, there's plenty of beer and food. Don't be thinking of sneaking off. You won't get any more that way. We'll all get there at the same time, including me and our speaker, Jim Anthony, who is going to unpack this slogan. I'm sure you've been seeing it all around the world. Verizon Cloud, new cloud, and terribly importantly, new rules. Jim Anthony, let's give it up for him, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
That's a 6 o'clock. That's pretty good.
That's not bad for 6. So I got good news and bad news for you guys. I can explain both the good and the bad in one sentence, actually. The good news is I am aware. The bad news is I am aware that I'm between you and the beer. Okay? So we're going to get through this. I want to talk to you about Verizon Cloud. It's a new product that we're bringing to market. The slogan here is New Cloud, New Rules, and that's what it's all about. So, I think everybody in this room will agree that cloud is here to stay, right? We're starting to see the benefits of cloud. We're starting to share and partake in the multi-tenant aspect, the idea of not having to buy hardware to deploy our applications. We're getting levels of scale and efficiency regardless of the vendor that we choose to use, right? Regardless of the cloud vendor, we're starting to see a lot of the benefits. Cloud is here, and it's here to stay. Whether you're a Fortune 500, a government, or a startup, you're starting to get the benefits of the cloud. Can I just see a quick show of hands? Who's on the cloud right now? Yeah? All right. We got 10, 15%, 20% maybe. So cloud is here. We're starting to see things around speed, right? Time to market. Imagine the application development life cycles of 20 years ago. If you had to stick with those kind of life cycles today, imagine how relatively unsuccessful your business may be if it took that much time to get apps out the door, right? So cloud gives us speed to market. You know, speed to market helps us create a competitive advantage. We're actually able to seize market share before any of our competition can get out there. We need cloud to help us do that. We don't need to wait for that equipment to show up on our shipping dock. We don't need to wait for it to be deployed by the IT department necessarily. Cloud is helping us do that. It's giving us agility as well. We want to tear it down and build it back up overnight. We want to do some things that are monumental when it comes to moving physical gear. Cloud lets us do some of those things around agility. Speaking of incredible things the cloud allows us to do, think about innovation. We actually have the ability to take advantage of things that we don't necessarily have the skills to manage or deal with within our own companies, right? We can take advantage of virtualization and multi-tenancy and the idea of using a platform that's been pre-built, pre-deployed, and I can pay for just a little slice of it and build applications to my heart's content, deploy industry standard applications to my heart's content. I can innovate quickly without having to go and hire the resources it takes to actually manage those kinds of platforms. And of course, all of this fosters creativity. Creativity fuels competition. It fuels the need for speed and agility and all the other things that we talked about. It feeds on itself, okay? Well, let me tell you, working at Verizon, we're right there with you, okay? So, it's here to stay, but is it doing everything we need it to do? Show of hands, the answer is no, right? It's not doing everything it needs to do. So where is cloud falling short? There are some performance things that we have to address with cloud. As a general pool of vendors out there, such as myself, cloud's falling short in the performance area. Whether it's slow or it's unpredictable, there's all kinds of different press releases and articles that come out about companies that have adopted cloud. They're unhappy. I don't get predictable results from my cloud compute pool. I don't get the types of response times or the types of services that I'm looking for from the particular cloud that I'm using. How about dependencies of different applications, right? Wouldn't it be great if I could leverage different application components for multiple apps? Wouldn't it be great if I could use those in a as a service kind of mode, right? So there's there's concepts there that we could actually use to increase the capabilities of the cloud. How about the management of the cloud? How about patching operating systems? How about looking at what's actually being utilized? What is my throughput on the network? What is the performance of the individual virtual machines of my platform? Do I have the ability to look down at the CPU level and see what's going on within that multi-tenant platform, right? So there's some instrumentation examples that need to get improved from a cloud perspective. And then, of course, you know, the elephant that's always in the room when you're talking about cloud is security. How secure is the cloud? Different vendors have different stories. But the fact of the matter is, every single buyer of cloud has to be convinced of the security posture of the provider that's standing in front of them. I'm no different, right? Every single one of us have to go through that buying cycle with every single vendor and explain how our cloud is secure. There needs to be more options. There needs to be a more pay-as-you-go security model. I want to be able to take advantage of things when I need to take advantage of them from a security perspective, and I might need to turn them off, or I might want to turn them off at certain points. I might need to modify them at certain points, and I'd like to do that on my own. I'd like to do that on a pay-as-you-go basis. I'd like to handle the instrumentation of those security devices and those security concepts, and I'd like to be able to make those decisions myself without the cloud vendor actually stepping in the middle. Okay? Interesting concepts, right? So, given the fact that cloud's here and the fact that there are some challenges, what would you do? Well, this is what we did.
How would you design the cloud? If you could start from the beginning, how would you build it? Would it be smarter? With truly consistent performance? Would you give a startup the same security of a Fortune 500? Would you give a Fortune 500 the same agility as a startup? We would, and we did. We had a choice between improving on what already exists or creating a better cloud. We went with the latter. This is a new cloud with new rules. Because when it comes to your company, you know what you need. So we put you in control, giving you the power to build and run the applications your business needs. With the confidence that your most sensitive data is protected, created with scalability and ease of use at its core. All this so you can experiment and expand at a moment's notice. It's time for a new cloud with new rules. Introducing Verizon Cloud.
This is where the crowd goes wild, right? So, it is truly a new cloud, new platform, new locations, and it's got new rules. Well, what are some of those rules? We focused on this first iteration of the new cloud on performance and control. So think about the idea of being able to not only have a top performing cloud, but being able to get predictable performance. Okay? So let's take it a step beyond predictability, and let's go with guaranteed predictability. Okay? And how about one step beyond that? I want to give you the instrumentation and the control to actually control what components of the cloud platform you need higher levels of performance versus lesser levels of performance. You can, in other words, what you can do with the new cloud platform is actually go in through the instrumentation and sign up for higher levels of IOPS on your virtual machines, higher levels of network throughput. You get to control exactly what those levels of throughput should look like. How about CPU speed? You want a guarantee on the CPU speed? I can give it to you on this cloud platform. Okay? So these are all concepts that we're building into the new environment. How about the idea of multi-tenancy versus isolation? Right? So multi-tenancy is the bane of the service provider's existence. I've got to be able to leverage my hardware platform across a lot of customers in order to recoup the cost of managing and dealing with that hardware platform. So I've got to put, as a service provider, I've got to put a lot of customers on that platform. Well, you know, one thing leads to another, and I've got a lot of customers on the platform, and all of a sudden everybody's competing against each other for the same resources. It's a fact of life, right? It's like driving the highway. We're all competing for the same 3 lanes. Well, on this particular platform, you can actually decide on your own, I would like to isolate certain components of my application so that I'm not competing with other users of this platform. Okay? Interesting concept. How about instant access and confidence, right? So think back to the video. Would you build a cloud platform oriented toward developers who require instant access to resources, right? And for that same platform, would you give them the security standard model, the security model that a Fortune 500 would demand as well, right? So these are the things that we're building into the environment. So remember, instant access along with the confidence associated with a highly secure platform. So, new cloud, new rules. We're talking about reserved performance, complete configurability, simplified management interface, and unmatched security. We're going to put the power of all these components into your hands so that you can decide exactly which elements you'd like to see for your particular application, for your environment, for your dev pool, for your QA team, for all the different reasons that you're adopting cloud. So, this new cloud from Verizon is actually two products. The first is Verizon Cloud Compute. So before this platform was available, you actually had a lot of things to worry about when it came to deciding on a cloud vendor. You know, think about multi-tenancy and lack of control, complexity of deploying applications, signing contracts and things like that. And then your security model, like I said earlier, you've got to be convinced on a one-on-one basis with every provider you do business with, what's your security model? How does that fit with me? Am I going to be able to get the compliance that I require for my business? And do I believe all that? Do I believe that message, right? So these are things that we're actually going to be putting in your control through the new platform. You're going to get a consistent, integrated, simple, secure, and reliable platform. On top of that, we're also introducing a new storage platform, Verizon Cloud Storage. It is an object-based storage system, API accessible, something that there's very few players in the market today. There's a high demand for it, and there will be more and more information about this as we move on. For the next 3 minutes, remember we're about 18 minutes away from break, from beer, so hang in there. 3 minutes, I'm going to show you how this actually works.
Okay, let's take a look at how easy it is to create and control your infrastructure. We're going to start off with the number of machines that have already been created, showing both Windows and Linux servers. If we go to create a VM, you'll see that we have a variety of templates to choose from, including the Windows and Linux VMs. Once we select a Windows server, you just have to give it a name, and then optionally provide a description. If we move on to how you control this resource, you have the ability to select small, medium, and large VMs like you'd see in most clouds. But you also have this custom capability. It'll let you pick a large VM with a lot of processing power and high speeds, but maybe just a little bit of memory. At the same time, you could select to have a lot of memory and just a little bit of processing power to match the needs of your application. Before we create the VM, let's look at some of the other options. You can attach this VM to the network. You can pick a public IP address, select the address, and attach it to your VM. But there's more. You can also connect to a private network. These are private networks that you create with your own addressing and any subnet. They're isolated to just your use, and so now you can attach them to the virtual machine. Our cloud doesn't limit you on how many networks you can have or how many you can attach to a machine, so let's attach it to another set of subnets. You'll see here in subnet 123 and my 192 net. But not only can you assign them, you can actually set the performance. Our system allows you to dial in a specific performance guarantee for each of the networks. You'll see here I'll set 1 to 200, and now I'll set 1 to 300 megabits a second, and we guarantee that we'll continuously deliver that performance. You'll see on the disks you have the same option. You can dial in the performance for each of your boot disks or your attached disks. In this case, we'll set it to 5,000 IOPS. And again, you can attach more than one disk to a virtual machine, just like your networks. Let's choose a disk that already exists. We might want to attach this disk because we're clustering our Windows servers. And so now I dial the performance of this disk. Each one can be independently controlled in the system, and we guarantee that performance. That's it. We're ready to create the VM. By clicking Create, the system will go off, provision all of those resources, and tie it into the networking. Let's take a look at the cloud storage. If we come up here and click on the buckets, you'll see that we can create a bucket to store our data in. You give it a name. This name is a DNS name that'll show up on the internet for you to be able to store and retrieve your data. You can optionally give it a description. And then you can set the redundancy between the single site or multi-site protection. You also get to select where you store it. By clicking Create, you'll see that it shows up within your workspace and you're ready to store your data. That's how easy it is to create a machine with controlled performance, total flexibility, as well as our cloud storage offering that makes it easy to create vast storage resources.
So, based on everything I've showed you, we actually have done it. We've built a new cloud platform. It is in beta today. If you're interested in taking a look at it, participating in our beta program, you can go to verizonenterprise.com/Verizon Cloud and sign up for the beta program. It is oriented toward developers, lines of business, federal governments, enterprise IT. It's there for everybody's use. Initially, we have the beta program deployed to our Culpeper facility in Culpeper, Virginia. And by the end of the year, we will be opening up other locations like Miami, Denver, Santa Clara, Amsterdam, and London, and as well as Sao Paulo. And then by the middle of next year, we'll be expanding into Southeast Asia, including places like Tokyo, Singapore, a couple of spots in Australia. So that platform, backed by the power of Verizon and the importance of the network, right? Tying those data centers together with a massive pipe, allowing you to move data, move resources between locations at your discretion. Number of customers we have, data centers around the world, lots of other options. The power of Verizon really makes this thing come together. So I want to open the floor up for Q&A, and before we end early, we're 13 minutes away from the beer time, and if we don't get to your question or your answer, come visit at the booth. I'll be there for the next 3 hours.
With, of course, beer. So, who's going to kick this off? Because there was a lot of material there, James. Oh, a hand right at the back. It's always the furthest person. I like that. That's a good challenge. Thank you for keeping me fit. Where have you gone? You have to give me the hand again. There it is, around this way. Oh, I thought I was being hijacked.
Shall I be in the picture or out of the picture?
Okay. This better be a damn good question. I know it's going to be brilliant.
Thank you. Is this solution 100% proprietary to Verizon?
Ah.
That's a good question. Yeah, so that's going to require some interpretation. So is the solution 100% proprietary to Verizon? So Verizon does not build compute infrastructure, and we don't build storage infrastructure. We buy it like everybody else does, right? So we're not in that business. Networking infrastructure as well. We buy those components as well. So from that perspective, no, it's not proprietary. You could go out and buy the same components that we bought. Now, another angle of the answer is, yes, it's a little bit proprietary because we've gone in and modified those components and put them together in such a way that it meets the needs of what we think the cloud buyers are demanding. So ultimately, this platform will be opened up so that we can handle API calls from multiple cloud stacks, whether it's CloudStack, OpenStack, different hypervisors, different technologies will be able to play on this thing. So it is off-the-shelf hardware that we've bought, but we've deployed it in such a way that that you wouldn't be able to replicate that on your own. So that's the answer I've got. How was that?
Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I told him you'd ask.
I don't want to get in the way of beer either, so I'll take that. Thank you.
Another question down there. They know because they have the mic.
How is this different from Terremark?
How is it different from Terremark? Mm-hmm. It's a great question. So, as you know, Verizon is in the mode of acquiring companies. Verizon has acquired several companies over the years, including Totality and Digex and Terremark. Terremark is the company that I actually came from. This platform is being developed so that it can be operated by the Terremark assets, the Terremark operations team, and the Terremark data centers. We are badging it Verizon, and the Terremark name is is part of the Verizon family now. So it's not really different from Terremark. It is definitely different from any of the other cloud platforms that we have out there today. You may have heard of Verizon's Compute as a Service. You may have heard of Terremark's Enterprise Cloud. And there's several others, right? There's a product out there called IPA that's very cloud-oriented from one of our other acquisitions. So this platform is definitely different from all of the legacy platforms, but it will be operated in the data centers that are operated and managed by Terremark, and the operations teams will be from Terremark that deal with it. It's a good question.
Is there an API ready? And if so, have you integrated with some of the existing integration frameworks?
So that's a very good question. There is an API that is as ready as it can be. So remember, the platform is still in beta. So we're still working through some extensions and expansions on the API set. It is an API set much like our older cloud platforms in that it's our API set. Eventually, we will be opening the API calls up so that we can handle OpenStack calls, CloudStack calls, and other API sets that are becoming more industry normal, right? So stay tuned for some of that. But today, there is an API that's ready, and it is our API stack that's ready today.
Is this Verizon Cloud private or public?
This is absolutely 100% a public cloud platform.
Thank you.
So the idea is once it goes generally available, you'll be able to go to a website, put in your payment information, register as a user, have an environment instantly provisioned, and begin using resources right away, as you would expect from any other public cloud platform.
Can you talk about your quality of service software choices in the back end?
That's a good question. No, I can't. So the quality of service, even though I didn't use those words while giving the presentation, that's absolutely what we're talking about with the idea to dial in your network IOPS, your storage IOPS, being able to pick the CPU speeds and things like that. It is absolutely a quality of service type concept. We didn't necessarily pull in any third-party tools to help us do that. We created these concepts ourselves, which gets back to the very first question that we talked about, modifying the underlying infrastructure in a way that allows us to manage those components.
Next one here.
Do you provide the CPU cycles in numbers, or it is in compute units like other providers give? I mean, I want to have apple-to-apple comparison when giving the performance numbers to our clients. Typically, I do JMeter tests in my in-house staging, and I want to compare the CPUs from the cloud servers to my in-house systems. So would like to have a clear answer whether it's in hertz or it is in compute units.
Yes, so I hope I give you the right answer. The answer that you're looking for, it will be in the real CPU cycles of the underlying platform. It will be in hertz, gigahertz, megahertz, and so on. It will not be in a nebulous middleware type measuring stick. It will be in megahertz and gigahertz.
Who likes Jim's answers? I like the way he answers these questions. Down the front there.
Yeah, I have a question about the auditing and compliance standards. Like we just saw, we created some VMs and we have some applications or databases or whatever running on them. So from the auditing and the compliance perspective, like it can have any kind of a data. It can be like highly confidential data or anything. And so if we have to go with the compliances and standards, so auditing things, so how do we?
So it's a very good question. So how are we handling audit, compliance, and certifications and things like that? If you're familiar at all with Terremark and Verizon Terremark, audit and compliance are one of the things that are very, very important to us. We have federal government customers that require FSMA moderate that are using cloud platforms. We have HIPAA customers. We have PCI customers. We have SAS 70, you name it. So audit and compliance are very important. That's the long-term answer to the question. In the very short term, we're not there yet with this particular platform, which is another reason why it is in beta right now. So we're working through some of those issues. We're actually going through a couple of different audits right now in the Culpeper location where we're running in beta, and eventually we'll get all the different locations certified, and the customers that are deploying on it will know the status of those certifications as we achieve them. It's a great question.
Thank you.
One here.
The new user interface looks very impressive. In fact, the degree of control that your customers will have, I think, will go a long way. Can you make some comments about the enterprise ability to control the security into your cloud? Maybe perhaps you can talk about, is this in a multi-tenant environment, and how they ensure that those machines that they rent are safe and secure?
That's a great question. So with the power of Verizon, the concept of the network options that are available through Verizon, through the traditional networking components and the networking services that Verizon brings, we have the ability to mix in private lines, dedicated connectivity, MPLS networks, private IP. So we have the ability to mix those types of services in with the cloud and safely cross-connect them. On top of that, you may not have picked it up very well in the demo, but we give you the ability to define the network address space. So, this is SDN in its truest sense of the word. So you get to go in and define the exact IP scheme you want to use, the range that you want to use, the size of that range. All those things are important concepts. We're working through some of the security stack. Whether there's going to be virtual components or physical components, we're still sorting through some of those elements. But ultimately, we won't roll this thing out if it isn't secure. So you can rest assured that between now and the time it goes GA, we'll get answers to some of those unanswered questions.
4 more minutes. 3 more questions. 1.
Jim, some public cloud providers are offering private cloud instances and options for the same technology. Will Verizon be doing something like that in the future?
So will we mix private cloud and public cloud together with this platform?
Yes.
Yeah, so there will be a concept where we'll be able to allocate dedicated resources to a customer. Obviously, those are going to cost a little more because they won't be shareable among the customer base. But yeah, we'll have the ability to mix cloud components that are dedicated to a customer along with multi-tenant, and we can even go a step further and mix in equipment that's built and configured and dedicated by the customer within that platform as well. So there's really 3 options in that scenario. It's a good question.
Hi, so how are you different than Amazon or Google or some of the existing public cloud provider?
That's a good question. So we're, if you've looked at the Gartner Magic Quadrant, you know that there's one provider that's sort of running away with the space according to the Gartner analysts. And so we as a cloud service provider industry, we have to step up our game and make adjustments to how we're actually going about doing what we're doing. And this is one of our efforts to actually begin to address that gap in capabilities. So how are we different? With this platform in particular, around the context of this platform, we will be very different in terms of the QoS things that I just showed you. So we're actually not only going to give you the ability to dial in your network throughput, your storage IOPS, your CPU speed, but those dialings in are going to be backed by an SLA, a guarantee that we're going to be delivering that to you at all times. And we're going to give you the instrumentation so that you can see it at all times. So that's something that's going to be very different, we feel, from a lot of our competitors. Another thing to think about is that with the power of Verizon and the power of the network tying these locations together, a future feature that we're working on is the ability to move workloads from one data center to another. You, as a consumer of the cloud, can decide, you know what, I'm seeing a lot of traffic in, the West Coast of the US. I'd like to move some of my infrastructure to the West Coast and begin taking the load from there and reduce latency. You will have the ability to do things like that. And it takes a cross-country network, a massive pipe, low latency network to really be able to achieve that. So those are just a couple of examples of how we feel that what we're bringing to market is going to be very different, and it's going to resonate with the buyer.
Last 3 of 3.
So you mentioned about your private IP services and also talked about differentiation. So my question is, does Verizon see that offering through a VPN network or a private IP, you're offering a differentiated services? And any comments or any analysis you guys have done on how much of your customers you expect to have a full end-to-end service from the enterprise through the VPN network right into the Verizon Cloud?
So I'm not sure I gather the question, but I think the question was around, are we going to force customers to buy into a Verizon network before they can buy the cloud?
No, so not forcing, but do you see that as a differentiation? And any analysis you have done, how many customers you expect to actually tie end-to-end?
That's a good question, and I honestly can't answer it, but my email address is there. If you could pose that question to me via email, I'll go get you an answer.
Okay.
Who thinks that this guy is amazing? Yes. Thank you so much. Jim Anthony, what a great ambassador for the Verizon.